Welcome back. Season number 2 of the Nashville Scene Podcast. We back, Patrick.
We did it.
I'm
We're
your
back
host,
for season 2.
My co-host. We're back for the second season. Editor-in-chief of the Nashville Scene.
That's right.
Season 2. Did y'all miss us?
I think they did. We got a lot of comments.
I hope so.
Yeah, it's great to be back for season 2, kicking it off this week with a couple of reporters who are on for the second time, I believe.
Yeah.
Great cover story last week from Hannah Herner, the Scene and Post reporter. Typically covers healthcare, a little bit different this time. Also with us is Hamilton Matthew Masters, a.k.a. Matt Masters, who took a lot of the photos that are in the cover story, as well as did some additional reporting on it. And it's all about the Christmas Day bombing of 2020 and recovery efforts on 2nd Avenue since. Thank you guys both for joining us.
Thank you.
Back for the
Thanks.
second time on the second season.
That's right.
Loving life.
Magic numbers.
Loving
right.
Previously, I believe you guys spoke with us about covering the state legislature. It's great to cover something a lot lighter, like bombing. So anyhow, want to start out with, this was something that was a really crazy moment in Nashville history in 2020. Christmas morning, early morning, this bomb went off downtown Nashville. Matt, I know you were on the scene photographing it pretty soon thereafter. Could you tell us a little bit about like the events of the day and what that was like?
Yeah, so like a lot of people that day, I was asleep Christmas morning. I live a little bit outside of the city, so I wasn't woken up by the blast, or I don't even think I was notified of it. I just happened to wake up shortly after the incident occurred. Looked at my phone, saw that this thing had happened. I think at the time we just thought it was an explosion, and jumped in the car and went to work. When I got up here, obviously it was cold in December. Being Christmas Day, there wasn't a whole lot of activity going on, but you could see the smoke. There were a lot of police cars and first responders all over. At the time that I got there, it was at least an hour after, maybe closer to 2 hours after the explosion that we now know was a bombing. They still hadn't cordoned off all of the streets, so I was able to get in to downtown pretty easily and start photographing and seeing. You had local, you had state, and you had federal agencies already there on the scene. There was still smoke in the air. The fires had been extinguished at that point, but I remember that there were bomb-sniffing dogs, and they were kind of going through different sections of the city to make sure that things were safe. And I was able to kind of stick in there and kind of as they were going through to make sure that there weren't other explosives or dangers, and they ended up pretty much shutting down the whole city, but I was able to kind of stay in and do some reporting on the ground.
Mm-hmm. And it was a terrorist act, lone act by a guy, late middle-aged guy, Anthony Warner, I believe was his name, and had rigged his RV to start out with playing Downtown, the Petula Clark song, and then gave a warning, and then this blast went off. Whatever it was, 5-6 a.m. somewhere in that time, and thankfully, miraculously, no additional casualties aside from him and his dog.
Yes,
with him, but no deaths. The police did heard the warning, got people out of the area, so it was just just the bomber, the sole death there, but a lot of damage done. A lot. And I remember you saying, being down there, it looked like a war zone, that day. And mayor comes down there and it's, maybe ATF, MMPD, just kind of swarming the area. And thankfully, within a few hours, we found out it wasn't a massive loss of life, but it seemed like it could have been, right? I think anybody who is in Nashville, of course, and it was in COVID, it was on Christmas Day. Yeah. It was a really stressful time to be a Nashvilleian, right? Yeah. Well, Hannah, why don't you tell us a little bit about like sort of when and where and how the recovery started with these historic downtown buildings?
Yeah, so I'd say about a year ago is when it really started getting serious about getting the road hopefully to the point where it will be open again. The block that's closest to the courthouse, be north, that just opened a few weeks ago, so people can go on that. That was mostly like office buildings there. Then we have 6 more months to the block that's closest to Broadway, and then we have a year to the middle block. And the middle block is where you're going to notice like the buildings that are still looking crumbly. And so all we know is the streets are going to be done then, but it is kind of remaining to be seen of like what those buildings are going to become and if there's going to be a developer willing to work on that. They're still kind of in fights with the insurance company from what I understand. So yeah, that's a long time to be working on that.
Yeah,
but
3.5 years, approaching 4 years since this happened, right?
And downtown just changed since then, right? It's the demographic of Nashville, so it's going to be a different Second Avenue.
Yeah. And something that you talk a little bit about in the story, and kind of like a more joyous part of the story, and something kind of interesting is, reaching out to people who grew up around here, like Jerome and I did, and our memories of Second Avenue and the spots. What was like the feedback that you got about when you were reaching out to people? What was Second Avenue like when you were growing up?
Laser Quest.
Laser Quest.
Everyone wanted to talk about Laser Quest. They had like fond memories.
Iconic.
I have a friend who was a youth group pastor. She took her group there, so
I had a friend that worked there. So it was like,
famous.
Oh, you had the end.
I had the end. Oh, man. Free passes for everybody.
Old Spaghetti Factory, the trolley car.
Yeah, the
specifically.
trolley car, Old Spaghetti Factory. Yeah.
Yeah, what do y'all say?
Well, and we were just talking about this before the pod, but growing up around here, it's so funny thinking about in the 90s, having a church bus drop me and my fellow like 13-year-olds off on 2nd Avenue.
Yeah.
And be like, go have fun, go to town. And you go to Laser Quest and you go to Old Spaghetti Factory. And, now Lower Broad specifically, but a little more broadly downtown, Printers Alley, 2nd Avenue is thought of such like an adult playground.
Very adult.
All these honky tonks and all that. So it's been very transformed. But I think when you brought it up, a few other staffers and I who are from around here immediately were like our eyes lit up.
Yeah.
Like,
and I was telling y'all, like, growing up, getting off the MTA, like, getting off the shelter. Y'all know if you're from here and you've been here long enough, you know what the shelter is, right? So getting off the MTA at the shelter and just being able to walk down there, right, and just go to Sabaro's, get some pizza, or like go to Hooters if you want some wings, you know what I'm saying? If that's what you want to do, or just like it was a very youthful place. If you didn't have school on that Monday, it was definitely a team party happening Sunday at one of those establishments that was allowing team parties to happen, right? And so like it was just an amazing time growing up being a teenager and being able to like take part of that downtown like development and just the resources that was there, whether you were supposed to be there or not, but you was there. But even like the 4th of July's, right? Where I remember we would we would like go downtown 4th of July with water guns and just be spraying random people. Like
and
right.
pedestrian
Right.
culture is a lot different than, and you could just sort of like walk around down there, and it's definitely sort of a flashback for a lot of us seeing
For sure.
Some of, like, for instance, the artifacts that are like pictured in the story and you referenced in the story.
Yeah, there's just a few at the Tennessee State Museum right now. They're very cautious. They're like, these is people's memories. We don't really want to take stuff from them, but if they want to bring things in, like, we welcome that. So I definitely wanted to tell the people about that. And also, if you wrote that note, I also want to know that.
Oh, tell people about the note.
There's a handwritten note that's pictured in the issue, so if you wrote it, I would need to know.
The Old Spaghetti Factory, like...
yeah. We think they thought maybe they were talking about Old Spaghetti Factory.
Okay, yeah, it's great. So the Tennessee State Museum, which is a wonderful group, is collecting sort of artifacts from this part of town and are open to people sharing them if they have these things, right? So definitely happy to boost that effort.
Yeah.
Man, that was just an amazing place. I'm like, and I think too, like in the comments, like people should like name your favorite thing that you did growing up in Nashville on 2nd Avenue. Like, put it in the comments right now. You do that, because like because I just think like it's not gonna be the same, which it is what it is, but. It's like, man, like some artifacts are just going to be memories that you have, right? So catalog those in the comments.
And how many businesses have closed down there thereabouts in the wake of the bombing? It's
something like 30.
It's quite a lot.
It's up there.
Some of which are just like straight up not going to return. Most of which, yeah. Tell us a little bit about Turn the Corner. We used Turning the Corner as our headline in print. It's also an initiative from Metro.
So that is one from the Downtown Partnership. They started that campaign, and really they just want people that are coming to Broadway to turn the corner and like support those businesses because so they can live, to see the whole thing come to fruition. And it's just been a hard go for them considering the bombing and then the pandemic and then construction. It's kind of like one thing after the other for those businesses, but I guess they're 70% locally owned, so that's cool. And they really want locals to get into it as well.
Yeah, there's definitely an effort to encourage not just tourists to sort of be in that part of town, right? Tell us a little bit about the short-term rental development.
Oh, yeah. So there's an update. This is already a little outdated, but that's okay. Because Councilmember Jacob Coupin wanted to get some short-term rental units in the old Spaghetti Factory building. It got voted down due to, I guess, just like concerns that, well, shouldn't that be workforce housing or shouldn't that be affordable housing? But he was like, look, this building is hard to get someone to, develop, so we should accept this. And so there's going to be 55 short-term rental units at the old Spaghetti Factory building. There's still a space in the front for like a restaurant or retail, so stay tuned about that.
Probably not an old spaghetti, not a new old spaghetti.
Probably not, but like no, So
we need a petition. Bring it back.
Yeah, y'all work on that.
Jerome, I don't know about you, but when I was like 10, I thought it was like the peak of fine dining.
Yeah, no,
like,
for sure.
We're going to the old Spaghetti Factory this
that
evening.
and Ponderosa.
I think I'll have the spaghetti and meatballs, actually.
That was top tier.
It really was. It was like that or Red Lobster. I mean, Red Lobster was the league of its own, kind of.
I thought the Pizza Hut buffet was top tier. So I heard they bringing that back. So
we're getting old now.
Yeah, man.
Well, tell us about the future of Turn the Corner, where they're at in the process. You kind of outline in your story. It's sort of a 3-block stretch between, I want to say Broadway and Commerce, or okay.
No, Union.
Union and Commerce.
Yeah, Union.
Good catch. And they're kind of doing them. They started with the northernmost.
Yes.
They're working on the middle or the southernmost.
The southernmost, so that'll be right by Chiefs.
Okay.
That just opened.
Eric Church's spot.
And that'll be by the end of the year. We should be able to go walk around. There's still going to be cars, but a wider sidewalk. They got rid of the street parking, so there's that. And then, the middle block, we got a little ways to go, but...
Yeah. And they kind of gave a general timeline when you spoke with folks from Metro about that.
End of 2025, I guess, is when it's supposed to be done. So that'll be 5 whole years.
Yeah, 5 entire years.
Yeah, but they really want the locals to come back. I'm not working for Metro, obviously, but I see their idea there, and it'll be interesting to see if people embrace it again. I think
that's always been a thing about like downtown for people that just live here and grew up here. It's downtown. It's not a place that we just like, hey, I'm going downtown to hang out and kick it. Like, there's just not a lot of to-go. That's not the to-go spot for a lot of people that just live here or from here. Yeah. And it's more has become like, oh, that's where the tourists go. Lower Broad, y'all have that. Have fun. And then you have your 3 days of amazing or a week, and then you go back home, type of thing.
It is true, but I mean, it's if you think about, Lower Broadway is powered by locals.
Yeah.
It's locals who work there. It's locals. A lot of them, the establishment are owned by, and it's also, our most recent issue, the one more recent than this, we have like a little. It's all about like drinking and bars and stuff. And one of the categories we have is where to take tourists, like cool spots to actually take tourists, and it's always like Roberts is like the one that comes up. It's like, you want the honky tonk experience, but you want it to feel local, go to Roberts, or that may be where you get a drink after a Ryman show or whatever, and obviously, a lot of cultural institutions like the Ryman in that part of the city, and this is just a couple blocks away. It's just a couple blocks off of Printer's Alley, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be more chill, I guess. But I think downtown has like a really fun energy. I'm kind of a downtown apologist. So I'm like, I'm game to go. I think it's fun.
Yeah. And it's, and you can still, I mean, Matt, some of these photos you got are really, really striking. It's like, some of them you would think it's like, oh, this must be from, a couple days after the bombing, but they're as recent as a couple of weeks ago, some of these photos, right? Did it really strike you when you were walking down there? Were a lot of people still, was there still a lot of foot traffic, or is it sort of slow there?
Yeah, so over the past few weeks, obviously this will continue to change, but there's kind of a maze of fencing that's happening, and you can walk through. And one of the things I did was spend a lot of time getting up as high as I could to really see things from that angle. And there's a ton of activity going on with the local businesses, with people coming through. One thing that I saw is that I would speak to, and this was kind of throughout the past few years, where I would speak to people, tourists, and some of them would say, hey, is this where the bombing was? Where was the bombing? And then other people would be going through who had no idea, and they were just kind of thought it was construction. But there is all this life and energy going on from both tourists and people who live and work here. So that's really interesting to see.
And there's some signage up. What does that say?
Just in terms of
like the QR codes and things like that?
Yeah. So there's signage that allows people to kind of know what the project is. I don't know how much they're paying attention to that when they're there or not, but they're definitely making an effort to say, this is a revitalization project.
Okay.
I got lost one time recently. Was because they had the sidewalks with the fences, and it's like only certain directions you can go, and if you make the wrong turn, it makes you have to wrap around, and I made the wrong turn. I was like, I used to be able to just cut right across.
Right.
You can't do that no more at this particular time. Yeah. So I definitely scan the QR code if you need to navigate it. Yeah.
And I remember being down there as recently as, during 2020, covering, some of the protests and the Black Lives Matter marches and stuff. And those pretty regularly would come from, there were at least a couple that came sort of from the Capitol and wound past the courthouse and down 2nd and up Lower Broadway. And that was a real sort of fascinating mini tour of downtown, seeing like the levers of government, and then you're down 2nd, and then and then people on Lower Broad, like, yelling, get a job at you. And it's like, it's a Saturday. And anyway, so yeah.
That was interesting during 2020, how you would see the kind of change in demographics of people who, were tourists, and kind of how those crowds would grow as you went down 2nd. And then interesting to think that all the photos that we have of that time, the videos, that we didn't realize were going to be some of the last of that, that space as it was.
It's true. Yeah, we have a lot of photo and video from that, and it was only a matter of about 6 months before a lot of it. Yeah. Crazy. Well, it's a great cover story. Is there anything else that sort of struck you in doing this reporting, either of you guys? The timeline or locals' awareness of it or anything like that?
I don't know. I
think we've laid it all out.
Yeah. I think, and we've hit on it here, but everybody just seems to have, at least Nashvilleians seem to have a story or a memory about 2nd Avenue, and it's always fun to hear people say, I remember that, or I love that.
Yeah, definitely. The fact that it was for locals for so long, I didn't know that. I didn't live here, so that's cool to see. And it's hard to imagine, knowing I only know Broadway kind of as it is now, so to know what you've all said.
But just think about this though, from like a local standpoint. Just think about Nashville's growth downtown in general. Like growing up, seeing it one way, right, and then over 5-10 year period, it like. Some places are there, some places are gone, and there's new places, right? And it's like, and so it's always for me, like talking to people that's older than me that remember a downtown that I didn't witness, being born in '90, right? It's a forever evolving thing, and so like this had to evolve due to a terrorist attack, which is unfortunate, but like I think that's becoming like just a common thing of Nashville. It's like, hey, I remember when this was here, and now it's this, or I remember this used to be that, and so it's like one of those things I think like we just are becoming accustomed to. If you grew up here, it's like, oh yeah, I remember.
Right? Sort of a built-in thing
like,
if you're old Nashville.
The arcade, right? Like that's another thing. Like I remember when Manny's Pizza was there, right? And so it's like just one of those things now.
Yeah. 2nd Avenue, very sort of like however 2nd Avenue goes, there goes Nashville as well.
Right.
And if I can just say, just for viewers and readers, if they don't know the backstory about what happened, we have tons of reporting on that throughout the years
Yes.
on the website.
Yeah, that as well, and we linked off to a lot of that on the piece, and you can find that in the story. Well, guys, it's great cover story. I appreciate both of your work on it. It started out just sort of as like Hannah just pitched like, I just want to get down there and take a look, and then sort of like, oh, this is a cover story, isn't it?
Yeah, we wanted to go in the buildings, but it's not safe even.
Yeah, they're
so
like,
they were like, no.
Yeah, that makes sense. You don't want to. Yeah. And hard hat? Did you get a hard
Yeah,
hat?
We did get a hard hat. That was great.
Check that off the reporter box.
Yes, yes.
You're looking great
You
under
should have
it.
had the picture of Hannah in the hard hat on.
I know.
We should put that on the
that
cover.
should
That's
be
a
cover
Second
shot.
Avenue artifact, man.
Yeah.
Well, great job, you guys, and thanks for joining us for Season 2, Episode 1 of the Nashville Scene
Season
Podcast.
2, we back, baby. Subscribe, like, share, all
Like
that
and
good
subscribe.
stuff. All that.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thank you.